last week. But I know we have to wear them that off, and maybe I could get used to it.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Summit United. Excuse me. That's good. Right. Summit Unitarian Universalist Fellowship's hybrid service. We are in sanctuary, we are on Zoom, and we welcome everyone this morning. Now to settle our minds and our spirits into the spirit of worship, please let's listen to Barbara and our prelude this morning. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning. This is September from the Year by Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel. And there's a little poem that goes with it. Flow, flow, dear river, never again will I be happy.
Thank you, Barbara. And welcome again to the Sunday morning hybrid worship service of Summit UU Fellowship. We here at Summit are a liberal religious community bound together by shared principles that are drawn from world religions, humanist teachings, nature and science, philosophy, and our own personal practices. The mission here at Summit is to commit ourselves to building a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world. And if this is your first time or if you're new to Summit, and like to know more about us, we invite you to go to our website, Summit UUF, or just talk to any one of us here. We would love new members. As we always do, I want to acknowledge that our fellowship physically resides on unceded Kumeyaay land, and that for more than 10,000 years, this land has been and continues to be home to the Kumeyaay people. We recognize the violent history of colonization in California, and we honor the legacy of the continuing presence of the Kumeyaay Nation. We do have a few announcements to make this morning. The first one, the family of longtime member Sally Mims wanted to express to us their thanks to the Summit Fellowship community for allowing them to hold their mom's celebration of life at her spiritual home here at Summit on Saturday, September 17th. It's going to be at 10:30. Visitation will be from 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. and the service will be at 10:30. So if you'd like to attend that, that's September 27th. We also have an announcement this morning from Mary Carter Vale, the Director of Religious Education. Mary?
Patrick, can you turn my headset on? Good morning. Is it working? There we go. Little crackly. How's that better? There we go. Okay. Working on all this tech stuff again. Today is the first day in a very long time that our RE program is back at 10 a.m. in the morning. So our children, we have 3 families here today. The kids are here in the service sitting with their families. And we're going to go back after the story. And we're back with regular RE during the service. Finally, after a brief period we tried in the spring, but now after 2.5 years, very exciting. It's a little more challenging for our families to get up and be here at 10 rather than come at noon. And it also allows families who are involved in sports and stuff to be able to attend. So very excited to be back. That being said, we are looking for volunteers and folks to provide snacks for our children and youth. And we'll be doing snack outside. So you'll see us outside under this lovely little area, the canopy that Mark has created just for RE. So we will be masked when we're back in there. And then as soon as we can get outside, kids have the option of taking their masks off and playing. We're playing games today before we make our covenant. So the second thing I wanted to share with you is on the 22nd, which is a week from Thursday, we're going to have some more making marshmallow roast in the parking lot over by the salon. Boy, this is really crackly. I'm going to go see if I can get this checked before the story. And we'll be in the parking over by the salon. You can bring your own brown bag dinner and have dinner together in community. And then I'm going to have marshmallow roasting materials and our little brazier, and we'll be marching fellows in the parking lot. So yes, we will be roasting marshmallows, and I will have vegetarian, vegan marshmallows for those folks that don't want regular marshmallows. So that's it.
Thank you, Mary. One more announcement from the Ministerial Search Committee.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Lara Barrett, and I'm a member of our Ministerial Search Committee. By now, you should have all received an email with a congregational survey. If for some reason you didn't receive that email, or if you prefer to fill out a paper copy, Amy Carstensen and I both have paper copies here in the sanctuary today, or you could reach out to us and we can make sure that you get a copy. We really look forward to all of your feedback as we search for our next minister, and we would like to receive all the responses by next week so that we can compile those answers and get ready for some more focused group discussions with the fellowship. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lara. We'd also like to just welcome this morning the Reverend Tom Owen-Toole, a good friend of this fellowship for quite some time. Reverend Tom was ordained in 1967 and continues to preach throughout the UUA, as well as conduct workshops on his most recent books on conscious aging and mindful dying. Tom and his life partner, the Reverend Dr. Carolyn Sheets Owen-Toole, are the active parents of 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. And we welcome him this morning. We're very lucky to have him. And now to begin our service, we'd like to light our chalice. And Reverend Tom, if you'd like to light while I read. Love is the aspiration, the spirit that moves and inspires this faith we share. Rightly understood, love can nurture our spirits and transform the world. May the flame of this chalice honor and embody the power and the blessing of the love we need, the love we give, the love we are challenged always to remember and to share. And now to lead us in our UU hymn, I'd like to offer Tyler Mitchell. We'll sing it both in Spanish and in English. Morning, Tyler. Morning.
De toros bajo el gran sol, su esperanza, fe, amor, verdad y belleza cantando, de cada tierra, cada voz. From all who dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. And now it's time for the aforementioned, time for all ages. Oh, excuse me. Thank you. We skipped that last week. How did we both miss that? Please join me for our UU aspiration. May love be the spirit of this fellowship, and the quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. And by the way, thank you for stopping me and making sure that we did the aspiration. Thank you, I appreciate it. Now it's time for all ages. Morning, Mary.
Takes a whole village to put together a worship service, doesn't it? So good morning, everyone. Come over here. It's nice to be back doing the story in the sanctuary because it is time for all ages. It's not just for kids. You didn't figure that out. So practically again. Yeah, let's try a new mic. Can you be patient for 1 second so you can enjoy the story? We're having sound issues with this headset right now. So give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, can y'all hear me now? I know that the folks online cannot hear me if I'm not on a mic, so. Okay, so we're back in here. Not perfect, but good, right? Because that's what we're going for. We are going for good. I just want to express my gratitude for everybody who are making our services possible right now. The volunteer service committee that Josh chairs, well, you and Tyler co-chairing kind of ish, and our amazing Zoom team, Patrick behind the cameras, musicians, all of our speakers. I just want to put a lot of gratitude out there because we're all working this together for this community. So I want to talk about belonging. We have a theme. We're now back into our theme rotation for the year. And this year's Soul Matters themes are all about helping us to reconnect. And belonging is a piece of that, right? Feeling like you belong. So this little green arch belongs somewhere. Does anybody know where it belongs? In the rainbow. Yeah, it's a puzzle. So see, it's fits right in that space. Like that little piece has a space where it belongs in that puzzle. And sometimes it's really easy, you know where you belong, you know, you can find your puzzle piece and you can fit yourself in there. Other times it's more challenging to figure out where you belong, right? So looking at belonging as an action that you're taking is deciding, where do I want to belong? You know, do I want to belong in the rainbow puzzle? Do I want to belong at home in my bed watching the service from the, you know, from the comfy of my bed in the morning? Maybe if I've worked late last night, that's the perfect place to be. Maybe I want to belong here. I just had somebody tell me that they're committed to coming in person because it's important to them. You know, so we all have different places of belonging, and that expands out. I mean, I'm using Summit as a tiny, tiny little piece, but you look at your family, where you belong in your family, where you feel comfortable. And belonging isn't always like that puzzle piece. We have to be forced into a spot. There's only one spot you fit. Sometimes you have to create where you belong. Like, I want to feel more belonging in a space. What am I going to do if I want to feel more belonging? What am I going to do? I'm going to step into that space and discover where I can connect. Where can I feel more belonging? So many people who come to this community, I'm going to use Summit as an example. Sometimes they come, they walk in, they join a service, and they think, that was kind of cool. And they leave. I didn't feel like I belonged. So as the belonging is something that you discover through the process of being with a community, right? And if you come into a community and you really want to belong and you might not feel like you fit yet, you find your spot, find the place. Like maybe there's something you really, really enjoy. For me, I love blowing bubbles. Okay. So you can find me many Sundays, at least this summer, blowing bubbles in the parking lot, because I've made a place where I can belong and blow bubbles, right? So what is it that you love? How do you want to belong? This is how we serve. This is how we are part of community. And I know Reverend Tom's going to expand a lot broader, but this is how we engage with community, is we find our space to belong. So right now, I'm going to take our children and youth, and we're going to head back to RE to do a story and games and make a covenant and maybe even play with a robot. So we know where we belong. And right now we are going to head out as we're getting back into the kids being in the service. We don't have a processional ready to go, but we're going to just walk on out and enjoy our time together. So thank you so much for listening to my little wondering about belonging today. And I hope you enjoy the service. All right, so kiddos, let's head on back. We'll make our own processional. There we go.
Oh, that's so nice to see. That's one more big step to getting back to what Summit feels like. That was good. This morning, a short reading from Nicole McKay. We gather to remember. We gather to remember those who could not grow old and those forced to grow old long before their time. We gather to mourn and grieve with one another all of our losses, the people, the stories, the loved ones, and the futures that could have been. We gather to do the hard work of facing the difficult realities of our present and our past, where there is conflict, violence, war, and hatred. We gather to hold space for silence as we try to make meaning of our history to help us work for peace and justice today. We gather to rekindle our source of hope for our future by recognizing in one another our shared humanity as we join in a concerted commitment for a better tomorrow. We gather because we need community to do all of this holy work. And now if you'd like to turn to page one or number 119 in your hymnal, Reverend Tom Owen-Toole will lead us in Once to Every Soul in Nation.
Please stand as your spirit and physical abilities allow. Once to every soul and nation comes a moment to decide in the strife of truth with falsehood for the good or evil side. Then to stand with truth is noble when we share its wretched crust. Ere that cause bring fame and profit, and 'tis prosperous to be just. Though the cause of evil prosper, yet 'tis truth alone is strong. Though its portion be the scaffold, and upon the throne be wrong, then it is the brave one chooses, while the coward stands aside, till the multitude make virtue of the faith they have denied.
Summit is a fellowship supported entirely by the voluntary generosity of our own members and friends, and we greatly appreciate our faithful pledgers who continue to keep up their monthly contributions. This morning, we'll be taking donations on the Summit UUF website. The link will be found in the chat very easily, and we also have ushers to come around this morning. Another step back towards normalcy. Once again, Barbara, good morning again.
Morning again. This is a part of a piece by beloved American composer Aaron Copland, written, it's a Passacaglia, written in a very ancient Baroque style of variation.
reading comes to us from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's number 584 in our hymnal, A Network of Mutuality. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. There are some things in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted. We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds, which precipitate and perpetuate war. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. Please join me in some moments of prayer and meditation. O eternal Spirit of life, of love, and liberation. Our prayer is simple. We need your partnership in this venture called life. We can't do it alone. Comfort us. We're hurting. Our neighbors are hurting. Our enemies are hurting. The planet is hurting. Console us and comfort us. We also call upon thee to challenge us, for we can grow listless and bored and lacking in energy to create a just and joyful world. We need to be challenged to our best selves. And let there be peace and unrest in all of our souls. Sufficient peace to bring us serenity and calm, and sufficient unrest to keep us morally awake and spiritually on our toes. Peace and unrest, unrest, and peace all our nights and days. Shalom, salam, ashe, namaste, blessed be, and amen. I want to thank Josh for inviting me to be here again in your midst, and for the whole worship arts crew that's here. And for Mary and Barbara, participants in the service, Mark Weedman preparing the grounds for us. And I want you to know that you're deeply held in our thoughts and prayers as you navigate the choices of new staff members. to complete the shared ministry that you so deeply deserve here at Summit. Carolyn, my life mate, and I hold you in our thoughts and prayers and continue to support Summit in every way we can, all the way home. And to be able to speak without a mask, I got the evidence I'm okay. This morning, a half hour ago, or 45 minutes ago. Because I sing in nursing homes with a mask. And I sing at the homeless center with a mask. And it's good to be a bit freer here. Once to every soul and nation comes the moment to decide. In the strife of truth with falsehood, for the good or evil side, then it is the brave one who chooses, while the coward stands aside till the multitude make virtue of the faith they have denied. That's a portion of the hymn we sang. This hymn is based on the 1845 poem fittingly called The Present Crisis, composed by James Russell Lowell, an American poet and critic and diplomat protesting the Mexican-American War. The words couldn't be more apt for igniting patriotic courage to address the moral challenges facing America today. Right now, on Patriots Day, this is Patriots Day. It's a legal holiday declared by 6 of our states, and the 21st anniversary of the brutal 9/11 terrorist attack on our homeland. Truly, now is the time to re-choose whether or not we patriots will ensoul a democracy with liberty and justice for all, or slide inexorably toward an autocracy, a posture that fosters falsehoods and bigotry. You qualify and you don't mentality. But today's sermon won't be another tirade against our nation. I'm not very good at tirades. And anyway, we're a hurting country. What with a lingering war in Ukraine and elsewhere, a constipated Congress, unresolved border tragedies, recent natural disasters and gun killings, embattled reproductive rights, persistent racial strife, not to mention healthcare and educational and economic inequities bedeviling America. We're a troubled and troubling land. As our Unitarian Universalist comrade, Lila Ibrahim, who's a noted novelist, perhaps you've read one of her novels, historical novels. She grew up in our UU congregations in Whittier, California. She says, we are a brutiful nation. We are a brutiful nation. I want to focus upon the cornerstones of democracy, or what makes America a decent nation when we perform at our best. What ideals signify our American way of life, our dream, our mission? Well, there exist three qualities that rise to the top of my list today: religious freedom, patriotic diversity, and compassionate service. Now, naturally, you'd compile your own inventory, and 6 months from now, I might edit my own. Freedom, diversity, and compassion bespeak the soul of Unitarian Universalism as well. Indeed, that's why back in the 1950s, we were considered by some sociologists to be, get this, America's real religion. Now, whether or not that's precisely true then or now, our core values remain similar to those of this country at its founding and when it stays on purpose. First, religious freedom. Remember, the Pilgrims were an English sect fleeing persecution in their homeland. They were called separatists because they desired to be completely separate from the official church of England. These independent souls wanted to choose their own ministers democratically. They insisted on local parish autonomy, just as our Unitarian Universalist congregations do today. Now, unquestionably, our American dream of religious freedom, which started in the Plymouth colony, has been tarnished over the years. In fact, in early America, an atmosphere of religious imperialism prevailed. The colonists saw nothing wrong with denying the rights of their Native American contemporaries and systematically deprived African American slaves of their inferior, inherited and imported beliefs. A student of history will also recall that among the trees on the lawn of the Massachusetts state capitol, just off Boston Common, where our UUA headquarters used to be, are statues honoring two women. First, Anne Hutchinson, expelled from the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1638 for what? For the religious crimes of heresy and conducting unauthorized discussions in her own home. And second, there's a statue of Mary Dyer, hung on the Boston Common in 1660 for what? For the crime of simply being a Quaker. And Baptists in Virginia were subjected to horsewhippings and other painful indignities. But gradually between 1620 and 1776, America was steered toward the radically new idea of religious freedom. You can believe according to your own conscience. Fresh ways of thinking began to emerge, and with the age of reason, Baptists and Quakers and Unitarians and Universalists all practiced religious toleration and encouraged its spread. So that what happened in 1787, when the Constitution was written, and remember, a handful of American founders were either Unitarians or Universalists, religious freedom was made the law of the land. And it was determined that a person's religious beliefs were his or her private concern and inviolate right. Private concern and inviolate right. You may remember that our American founders were related to various faiths, and they disagreed as to the nature of religion, debating whether it was rooted mainly in reason or revelation or a combination of the two. But they were unswervingly committed to the notion of disallowing one dominant religion. They erected a wall of separation between church and state. And so we dare not take for granted this noble experiment at the heart of our American dream, an experiment which interlinks social and political and religious freedoms. For in other countries, there is often no such pattern of religious diversity. One religious group may have special constitutional standing, as in England and Scandinavia. Another faith may dominate without having special legal rights, as in France or Mexico. And our own Unitarian congregation in Prague, which Carolyn and I have personally visited, suffered directly at the hands of the communist government, as well as being sabotaged regularly by inside traders in the sanctuary. And in Romania, our Transylvanian Unitarian siblings have been doubly persecuted as both an ethnic and a religious minority, even unto this day. And our religious kin in the Philippines suffer bigotry as well. Furthermore, sometimes the in-resident religion is not only fundamentalist, but also politicized, as is tragically evidenced today throughout the Middle East. Yet we could hardly say that religious freedom has been fully realized in America. Certain religious groups have been treated badly, still are, in this country. The histories of anti-Catholicism and anti-Semitism sorely illustrate that. And we Unitarian Universalists, despite our modest size and the fact that we're mixed up with other faiths, we've been the target of our own share of discrimination and exclusion. And there remain those, of course, who still clamor for America not only to be a theocracy, but a Christian one at that. Numbers of self-described Christian white nationalists are running currently for various political offices throughout our land. We need to continue to bring up our children in the belief that one may worship or not worship as she or he or they choose, and that whatever the choice, one can still be a first-rate American. I contend, we contend, that we liberal religionists are as pro-life, pro-family, and pro-morality as any fundamentalists, and we must enter the political fray and promote vigorously yet respectfully our views of human freedom and dignity for everyone. For we are convinced that good religion and good government mean promoting a sense of pluralism, not favoritism, a sense of persuasion, not coercion, a sense of mediating moral language, not alienating jargon, a sense of humility and not arrogance about ultimate beliefs and values. And furthermore, some of us believe that to achieve and sustain these ideals for our nation, we need to subordinate ourselves for the good of the whole. In other words, we've got to sacrifice. Sacrifice through taxes to properly educate everyone. Sacrifice through community service as volunteers. Remember Shirley Chisholm, the first African-American to serve our country in the state of New York in the late 1960s, said, "Service is the rent we pay for the privilege of being here on earth." How are we paying that rent tomorrow morning and Thursday evening? And to sacrifice social and economic entitlements when we don't need them. To simply sacrifice some of our personal freedom in service of a healthy environment, a fairly educated populace, and a just society. As Viktor Frankl, survivor of the Holocaust, sagely remarked, we need the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast to be supplemented by the Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. What if before we entered the voting booth, or however we're going to vote this November, during any election time, somebody was there to say, hey, okay, my fellow citizen, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to vote for the common good of this land over your own private interests? So help you God, or whatever version of the ultimate resides in your soul. That's not a radical or novel idea. The common good is the core principle upon which our country was founded. A second mark of the American dream is our unswerving commitment to patriotic diversity, which flows directly from our commitment to religious and civic freedoms. Today's political orthodoxy to the contrary, there's no single, pure, perfect way to be a patriot. That is a lover of and a loyalist to your homeland. There are many ways. There's your way and there's my way. And there are other ways outside this room. So our UU congregations have aspired to furnish a house of forthright opinions and wide embrace, welcoming a potpourri of patriots. All our religion ever demands in return is that we wear our patriotism honorably and express it respectfully. I'll never forget, during the Persian Gulf War, we had on our campus at First Church support group for the deployment military personnel. Families of the deployed were meeting on our premises for support. And protesters of the war were meeting on our premises for support. And I was preaching a sermon on how I was opposing personally our involvement in the Persian Gulf War. And 10 feet to my left was a member of our congregation, we'll call him Phil, dressed in his full military regalia. And after the sermon, he and I led whoever wished to go over to Bard Hall to keep the conversation going, the support going for a better and just America and world. +50 years ago, the reading that we have, The Network of Mutuality by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we read. A portion of that, he spoke at our Unitarian Universalist General Assembly in Florida, about 55 years ago. And he said, I'm proud to be a creatively maladjusted American. That's the phrase. Creatively maladjusted American. Because until the good society is realized, King said, I will remain creatively maladjusted. And so should we. But the road remains long and hard. Given today's voter suppression efforts in our own land, shameful. And given the Electoral College debacle, and wouldn't it be wondrous if Congress deigned to make Election Day a national holiday, wherein there's automatic voter registration and universal mail-in ballots and cars waiting to pick you up? Why not? What's there to argue about that? We've got to do everything possible to address the apathy of our citizenry. Our nation on the whole sports one of the lowest voter turnouts of any country in the world. Shameful. And to be sure, there's a resurgence of civic engagement among our 20-somethings, what with movements such as Black Lives Matter and reproductive choice and immigration rights, but still indifference reigns supreme. There was a recent college graduate, 23 years old, who said, "I don't care enough to care about why I don't care." The only cure for the ills of democracy is always more democracy. The third cornerstone of what makes America truly America is our commitment not to prowess, but to goodness, not to conquest, but to restoration. As with religious freedom and patriotic diversity, compassionate service isn't always our accomplishment, but it's our aspiration as a core tenet of our dream. Furthermore, our humanitarian record, both at home and abroad, as with that of many countries, we aren't alone, but you have to clean up your own side of the street before you start poking at other countries. It's been checkered in recent history. It remains our democratic duty as Americans working collaboratively with others to restabilize politically and economically any regions of the world that we've chosen to assault or invade. After all, aren't justice and mercy core American ideals? Isn't humanitarianism central to our way of being Americans? Or is compassion merely a platitude, or a political ploy, or a policy reserved for our own people? I hope not. I simply want a good government and a good president who will motivate the rest of our citizenry to be good enough individuals. I have no illusion, no interest in our president or citizenry being pure or perfect. And we'd be way better off if we'd quit focusing one way or another upon all the hype about America being great and just work on being a pretty darn good country, a better country. And good not as in power or splendor or wealth, but good as in practicing justice and freedom at home. As I said, when we've sufficiently cleaned up our side of the street, then being good in our willingness to model our best values abroad. You know, with all the talk about the possible reinstatement of the military draft, I say, let the United States require every citizen, every young woman and man and sibling to give at least, this is least, I would go higher, 2 years of national duty to be spent in delivering services, providing training, education, or otherwise assisting in compassionate national and or global service. I know I could have benefited from such patriotic service myself, instead of just jumping from school to school to school to school. And I can think of no greater challenge and blessing for our own grandchildren and our great-granddaughter up in Portland, Oregon. Now that's something of what I mean by being a good nation. Let's stop worrying about leading the world. And let's start by joining it. And then with greater humility, we can possibly play a wiser, more compassionate role. Because someday soon, it appears to this patriot that if we're true to our American way of life, to our path, our flawed path of freedom and diversity and compassion, we must say, no more innocent deaths, home and abroad. Someday soon, America's conscience will be goaded to wage peace, home and abroad. Someday soon, our espoused character will push us to lay down roads and dig wells of clean water where people can safely drink, and build hospitals and schools and teach hygiene and sexual ethics and mathematics, and inoculate against disease and battle malnutrition, and treat people of different colors and orientations and classes fairly at home and abroad. Someday soon, we will truly ask ourselves, what in the world today most breaks our heart and offends our sense of justice? And we will join with others who are committed to transforming that injustice. Someday soon. Someday soon. For deep down, as we Americans well know, if we're truly interested in making any corner of the world safe for freedom and democracy, then we've got to unleash, as Bob Alperti put it, weapons of mass construction. Our unique, our powerful, our finest American weapons, namely opportunity and justice and religious freedom and education and hope. That sounds too upbeat. So be it. For I happen to belong to a life-affirming, this worldly, hopeful religion. And I'm banking my energy and my gifts on being a practitioner of religious freedom and patriotic diversity and compassionate service. Let us join together in our closing hymn 159. This is my song, Finlandia. Stand as your spirit and physical abilities allow. This is my home, God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pines. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land.
And now, before we extinguish our chalice and some closing words, I just want to invite everyone back next week when it'll be our first of probably many little truly lay-led services. Be ready to hear from 4 members of our board talking about belonging, but please be here next week because our lay-led people will need our support, and let's do this. The closing words come from Darcy Roke, if you'd like to extinguish our chalice. There is too much hardship in this world to not find joy every day. There's too much injustice in this world to not right the balance every day. There's too much pain in this world to not heal every day. Each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the divine or the grace of divine presence every day. Now, if we'd all like to stand and join in our closing circle song.